turn over to you.
Thank you, Karen. Thank you for having me here. As Karen alluded to, I was asked to come and speak on the topic of mentorship, and in particular, what I'd like to cover today are three primary objectives. Number one, to describe, if you will, some of the underlying principles and sort of the foundational elements that make a good mentorship experience. And then secondly, because we are talking about a dual role here, you have the mentee or the learner and the mentor. What is it that each of those two partners in this thing can bring to the experience to draw out and create the kind of quality learning experience that we all would like to have? When mentorship is done good, it's amazing the kind of learning outcomes that can occur. Equally, when mentorship is done poorly, it's amazing how much learning we miss out on. I've had the great privilege to be around some pretty amazing mentors in my day, both in medicine and outside of. One of whom is sitting right here front and center, Dr. Deborah Wurtzfeld, from the Department of General Surgery. So glad she could be here. And so again, I'm just here to share what I've observed and what I have learned from them. I have this wonderful vocation wherein I get asked to step into certain environments that I may or may not have some experience with. And the people that invite me, I say, great, would love to come and talk to your group or work with your group, but you got to help me out. Who are the people here who are doing it the best, who are doing it better than others, who are the ones that people within that environment aspire to be like, to want to emulate, etc. And I find out who those people are, and then I go find out what they do, and then I bring it back to you, and I look at the genius when in actuality I'm not. And that's the kind of dynamic that I had with people like Deborah. And so this is sort of a collection of all of those interviews, all those experiences I've had sitting across with people just like you to say, as in terms of mentorship experiences and mentorship qualities, what is it that we need to do? So we can do more effectively, more of, less of, and this kind of thing. I'm also someone that's on the low end of the technological spectrum. My lovely PowerPoint show, this is the first and only slide that there is. I much more prefer to engage and talk. So I would hope that we could establish some interaction here. And the very first thing I want to start with is a question to the group, seeing as that we have both mentors and learners, and or if you were a mentor, at one point you were a learner. So the first question I would have, please don't feel shy, what are the kinds of attributes, if you will, that when we think of the best mentors come to mind? Anybody? Enthusiastic. Available. Where have I heard that from that? Generous, absolutely. It's a lot of time investment required to be a mentor. Encouraging, that's huge. Mentorship is a relationship, right? It's developmental. One of the first things I talk about is creating a psychologically safe environment. If it's not safe, we're not going to share. If there's not a sense that I can be vulnerable and trust that it's okay to be vulnerable in front of you, it's going to limit what I share to you. And here's the thing I always tell people, your mentors don't have ESP. They don't know what's going on in here, they don't know what's going on in here. And if it's not safe, if the learner doesn't feel it's safe, they will not share the very information that they need to become better at what they do. Conversely, when you're in the role of mentor, you have a power imbalance. You have more power than the learner does. And so the task of the mentor, one of them is to sort of de-emphasize some of that, to create this safe environment where we encourage one another and we contribute to this shared experience together. Great point. Other qualities, attributes, mentors? Respectful. Yeah, that's a big one. I think that relates to that safe environment, doesn't it? Wise, yeah. Hey, you might be the most respectful, encouraging, supportive person there is, but you don't know anything. You contribute too much to me. Absolutely, you gotta know your stuff. Honest, yeah, for sure. A lot of what I talk about today is in terms of creating this optimal mentoring experience, is not, we got to get to this place where, we're holding hands and singing campfire songs. Not necessarily. I mean, it's important to establish trust, obviously, and you can't have trust without that personal connection and personal investment. But we also, in the role of mentor, hold people accountable. We have to provide them with constructive feedback that will make them better, which sometimes means being blunt and honest. We're not doing people any service if we're not holding them accountable to the standard that we would expect. Other ideas, attributes?
I think we also push you to the next level, push you beyond your comfort zone, and that's the key element.
That's a great point. I love that one. The idea of mentoring is to take people to a level where they're uncomfortable, but it's just that next increment of uncomfortableness. We're not throwing them to the wolves. I can share a great story around that. One of the best mentors I've been around is a cardiothoracic surgeon from the United States. His name is Dr. Kurt Tribble. In describing his mentoring philosophy, he says, this is what I do. He says, I communicate to my residents before we step into something. He says, I am keenly aware of their strengths and their limitations and where they are at. And so I tell them, I'm going to be putting you into situations upcoming that will make you uncomfortable, but that you are ready for. Again, it's just that next increment. And when we go into the OR, if you don't hear anything from me, that's a good sign. I am not going to say anything or do anything unless I am absolutely certain that the very next move you make is going to cause some horrible outcome. And he says, you know what happens when we create that kind of environment? That trust, that belief in the person who's performing? He says they get good, and they get good fast. Because they're not thinking about what I'm thinking about. They're just sowing. He says, that's what I want you to do, just sow. Great point. Other attributes?
Yeah. Being able to listen and ask the right questions.
Sure. Listening is huge, which is tough. We have so many things going on in our daily lives, right? So part of being a good mentor then is managing the self, making sure that I'm mindful of my state. You know, I got a million things on the go, but when I step into this moment to meet with a learner, can I be present? You know, can I quiet down the noise, if you will, to be fully present and listen in this moment? Great one. Others? There's a follow-up question, so we won't burn out all your answers. How about in terms of creating an optimal learning set of conditions? What might that look like? Period. Whether we're talking about mentors or learners, what have you. I learn best when the following conditions are in place. Undaunting? Yeah, like to be pushed, like to challenge.
When there's feedback?
Sorry?
When there's feedback?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Clear expectations.
Yeah, that's huge. That's huge. That's my next point, actually.
Being immersed.
Being immersed, yeah, for sure. I think the psychology comes into it again. You know, I think most people thrive under conditions where they genuinely feel respected, appreciated, cared for. You know, if you take a look, for example, I know not everybody in here is a physician. I do a lot of work with physicians, so many of my examples might come to that, but they would be equally applicable in whatever area you are in, where there's the mentor-mentee relationship. But I think, again, creating that safety net where they know, you know, whatever it be, whether it be an outcome that wasn't great, a performance that was a little off, some question that keeps me up at night, that sort of thing, knowing that I have someone there who has my back and who is genuinely interested not only in my professional development, but my personal development. That's what makes a mentor. What's the difference between teaching and mentoring? It might just simply be what I just stated there. A teacher, and most teachers are genuinely empathic and care about their students' well-being, but the definition of teaching is to impart knowledge. Mentorship is that, plus it's a developmental relationship. There's a personal connection that goes part to part. Anything else in terms of optimal learning conditions? Focus, yeah, absolutely. So part of the focus bit is, as a mentor, can I scan myself, the environment, and the learner to identify those things that could be a distraction? You know, here I am trying to teach them some new thing, and they're worried about this big exam that's next week, and I know there's nothing I'm saying right now that's getting through. Okay, we're going to take a little time now, 30 seconds, regroup. What's on your mind? What's listen, here's a plan on how we approach that. We can deal with that. Can we put that aside for the next 30 minutes? I think we can. Okay, great. I like to use this example. I do a lot of work in sport as well, and I have a fascination with, in combat sports, the communication that happens between rounds, so whether it be boxing or MMA, these kinds of things. The reason I have a fascination with it is because, again, when it's done well, it's remarkable the kind of communication that can occur. You're having someone come to you as the coach. You have 1 minute to get him or her back to the right level of focus and energy and presence to perform at their best, at the highest level and on the grandest stage. They are coming to you. They could not be more elevated in terms of a stress response. Every possible stress physiological measure is through the roof. And so when they sit down, the first thing you need to do is help them come down from that experience. Deep breathing, reset physiologically, get them to a place where now, if you have some feedback for them, they will actually hear it. Otherwise, it's just noise. Once they receive 2 or 3 bits of information, okay, now it's about psychologically getting them ready to step back in. This is the same. If you're in the middle of something, there's not a lot of time, you can tell my learner is distracted. What can we do in a minute to help them reset? To help them get to a place where they can step back in with focus and goals. These are great answers. Anything else? Learning condition, ideal?
Creating a safe environment so people are not afraid to make mistakes or scared of doing things that might cause mistakes.
I would say number one on the list by far. Because again, if you think about what we're talking about here, again, mentorship is a relationship. So relationships are built on trust. If there's trust, I will share, I will be open, I will tell you what it is that I need to learn about, what keeps me up at night, what I'm fearful of. And secondly, if I feel it's safe to go to you with those things, wow, now I'm going to get the answers that I need, which not only allows me to sleep better at night, it makes me better. To think, the biggest barrier often is just whether or not it's safe. You have lots of answers that could help them get better, but they don't feel they can approach you. If there's something that's getting in the way of that, it could be their ego, it could be their insecurities, it could be just their perception. One of the things that gets in the way is pedestal thinking. Oftentimes as the learner, we put the mentor on this imaginary pedestal, which only does one thing. It kills learning for both of us, right? It isolates them, they're up here, and the more that they begin to buy into that thing that I'm higher than or bigger than or what have you, it makes it much more difficult for them to own up to their own mistakes, their own insecurities, their own fallibilities, to live up to their own results. And so it might prevent them from sharing and opening up. For the learner, when someone's up there, you think, oh geez, I hate to ask a stupid question, or I hate to be demeaned, and what they tell me, it's just not worth it. So pedestal thinking kills learning in both directions. If it's safe, we eliminate that kind of hierarchy. This is great. Any other bits that people can contribute there as far as learning conditions? No? So what's interesting to me is, we're just having these 2-question discussion right now, we've identified a list of conditions, if you will, that make for an optimal mentorship experience. No one here has a PhD in mentoring as far as I know. Maybe you do, I'm not sure about it. I'm going to guess that nobody does. And yet, intuitively, we have this template. Intuitively, we know what it would look like when it's done really well. So why do we get it wrong so often? Because we're human. Who's trained us in it? Nobody. We're trying to figure this thing out as we go along. So what I want to spend the rest of our time on, and I think we have about, we have slightly over an hour now? We're a bit late. Or does it still have to finish on the hour? On the hour? Okay, no worries. Bring it back to part 2. What I'll spend the rest of my time on then is, how do we actually create and practice some of what we've just talked about? What are the elements? And the first thing we'll talk about is that, the foundational aspects of a good mentorship experience, and then we'll focus on each person's role more specifically. Some of these have already been touched on. Number 1, this gentleman mentioned, it's got to be psychologically safe. When it's safe, there's trust. When there's trust, there's openness. When there's openness as a mentor, I'm going to get access to what it is that the learner needs from me. I'm a teacher, I'm a mentor. I want nothing more than to give him or her what it is they need to develop. But I don't know what's inside there. So the accountability factor then on the learner is that. I always tell them, listen, this is the transaction that you have agreed to. Okay? Whatever your vocation, your particular job, your particular role, you are giving your life's blood in return for learning. Do everything you can to maximize the return on your investment. If we were talking about a mortgage, and you were thinking to yourself, boy, I really would like to get a better interest rate, I'm going to go to the bank and see what I can do, and I walk in the door and I see the mortgage broker, and I think, I don't know, I'm pretty busy. I hate to bother them. They might say it's a silly question, this and that. I'm just going to go home. Nobody's going to do that. Why would it be any different with your mentor? It's the same transaction. Your life's blood for knowledge in return. Whatever is getting in the way as a learner from accessing that, get rid of it. Get over it. Go ask the question. Yeah, you might have some bluster or what have you, and then there'll be a long pause, and you get the information you need, which is all we want at the end of the day, is to get the information. So psychological safety, number one. Someone mentioned over here, clear roles and expectations. That is huge as well. And that might manifest in terms of how will you be accessible as the mentor? What are the particular learning objectives that you expect this person to live up to? From their perspective, what are their unique learning needs that they want to create, experience, achieve, etc.? Have that conversation early and revisit it often. Their needs might change, your expectations might change. As long as we're on top of that, there won't be any flack or any problems communicating that as we go forward. Excuse me. I mentioned before that the idea of mentorship is a dialogue, not a monologue. It's not top-down. This is a shared experience, and I always encourage mentors, put the expectation on your learner that they are to contribute to your learning as well. This is not a give-only interaction here. And when we do that, when we place a bit of that expectation on the learner, it does a few different things that benefit each party. Number one, for the learner, greater accountability and greater empowerment. For them to think, wow, I can actually contribute something of value to someone who I look up to so much. Good examples in medicine. Fifth-year residents who are gearing up for their certification exam, most physicians will tell you that the level of technical knowledge that they have at that particular time probably in many ways exceeds their far more experienced attending physicians because it's just so current. And so when the attending physicians are quizzing and putting their fifth-year residents through the paces, I always tell them this is an amazing opportunity for you to learn as well. This is a chance for you to sharpen your sword and to get the newest and latest and current knowledge. Put that expectation on the learner. Now, what do you get back in return as the mentor? Well, now I'm even more interested and engaged. This is not just something, a task on my checklist. There's an expectation I'm going to learn something here too. I'm going to grow, become better at my craft by virtue of this shared experience. And it's amazing how the learners will respond when you put it to them. First, they'll take a deep breath and, oh my God, can I contribute anything to this person's learning? And then you watch what happens. You watch how quickly they elevate and expect that they elevate you as well. Excuse me. And then another sort of core condition, if you will, for mentorship experiences that I espouse to people is, and particularly for the mentor, you might think it would be the other way around. It applies to both. Rid yourself of the ridiculous burden and expectation to know everything. You will not now. You will not ever. But again, I think that can get in the way when we're trying to create something that is shared. I think oftentimes people are fearful. As the mentor, I would hate to look like I don't know the answer to that question. Some of the best mentors I've been around willingly and quickly acknowledge, that's a good question. I have no idea what the answer is. But, if you can go and learn that and we can discuss that next week, that'd be fantastic. You win, I win. There was a resident I worked with several years ago, a very senior resident, very well respected. And we had this powerful experience. We do a curriculum for physicians. And there was a very junior resident who you could tell, you could feel that they had something on their chest. They just wanted to get out there, a question or what have you. But because they were still so junior, they were trying to figure out, the dynamics of this thing and is it safe? The safety part wasn't established yet. They threw caution to the wind and they revealed what it was, some question. It was some technical thing. And I'll never forget it because it was that moment where myself and my co-facilitator, Calvato, we disappeared. All the senior residents just turned to this person and just the support and the empathy and the ideas and the normalizing of, oh yeah, been there, was there last week. And here the juniors are going, you actually get stressed at times or make mistakes? This is crazy, I never would have thought that. So the one resident at the end of this incredibly open discussion emailed the rest of the entire resident cohort and said, here's my top 10 biggest screw-ups to date in residency, think of yours. And just what that did for the juniors, I'm okay, you're okay. Amazing. One of the physicians that I respect the most as a mentor and practitioner. He's very self-aware, and he says, I've learned some things over the years about myself. He says, and what I've tapped into is on those days when I wake up and feel really, really good, I know I'm at risk. He said, I don't know what it is, but on those days, that's when I'm most prone to make mistakes or miss things or what have you. So he'll go into his particular area, and he'll take his, if he has resident or residents and med students aside, and he'll say to them, okay, here's the deal. I'm feeling really, really good today, so you gotta protect me, because this is when I'm gonna screw up and this and that. And so again, that whole shared thing, here's some wide-eyed medical student looking up this person who's very renowned in their area going, are you kidding me? That's fantastic. Instantly, how much more focused is that med student? Instantly, how much more focused is that resident? How much more engaged are they? And it's just from this person being open and honest and actually sharing a bit of vulnerability. Incredible. Make it shared. Let them in. As far as the purpose, if you will, of the mentoring experience, there's the obvious things, impart knowledge, that sort of stuff. And more specifically, in the role of mentor, we're here to capitalize on your experience. So it's the stuff that's not in the textbook, right, that we're trying to imprint on the other. This is the theoretical stuff. This is how stuff really works. Take it from my experience. It's filling in those gaps in terms of situated learning, and it's also exposing them to the novel conditions that, again, may not be as clear just from textbook learning. But to me, aside from that, one of, if not the most important goals of the mentorship experience is to help this person be and become whatever this role is they're stepping into. And that speaks to the level of their identity. We're trying to help this person establish a sense of self in this role that they can trust in, that they feel confident in, that they believe in. And so again, you cannot do that unless you're willing to invest at a personal level, because we have to get through to the things they are maybe uncomfortable talking about, what stresses them out, their insecurities, that sort of thing. And when we do that, now we're helping them create that ever important identity that they will carry forward. It's like we're trying to help them find their own voice in this role. They cannot be you, they can try to emulate you, but they have to take the best of you and filter it through this thing called their self and be and bring that in a way that's natural. So those are the key aims in my mind, if anybody has others, for the mentorship experience. So let's get on to the specific roles that, last three is a little quicker than I thought, but that's okay. So we'll start with the mentor, because just as I scan the audience, it would seem to me that there's more mentors perhaps than mentees here, if that's an accurate assessment. And again, it doesn't matter, because at one point or another, you're going to be on either side of the equation. So the same lessons apply. The role of mentor, we mentioned certain aspects about it already. Primarily the difference between teaching and mentoring. Again, we're talking about establishing a personal relationship that is developmental, less so than performance-based. Performance is part of it. But we're helping to create confidence and competence in this person. So as a result, there are certain things that we need to invest in that perhaps require a bit more time and energy than other roles. So the first thing I encourage the mentor to do is you better know why you're doing this. Do you have a clear sense? Is there a sense in your mind as to why the investment of time and energy that I'm going to put into this is worth it? What is the payoff for you? How do you get a return on that investment for yourself? What is it about being a mentor that is meaningful and purposeful enough that I know even though I'm sacrificing time and energy, it's worth it? And you see, where does this manifest? Okay, in those moments where, again, you're so bogged down by stuff, there's a million other things you need to be doing, and you're about to meet this person, and you go, oh God, why am I doing this? Why am I wasting all this time or putting all this time? Why aren't I doing these other things? And we ask, why? And the thing we don't do is we don't answer the question. We just let that why kind of sit there. And we get frustrated, we get more disenfranchised and more annoyed and more burdened and what have you. Whereas if we know why, in the moment, it's valuable and meaningful to contribute to this person's learning, and we can summon that, guess what it does to all that other noise? It minimizes it. And all of a sudden, boom, we got energy we didn't think we had. We got focus, we're ready, we see it as a privilege. How grateful am I to contribute to this person's experience? That's all it took, just reconnecting to why. I think the idea of leadership and mentorship are very synonymous. You think, what's the definition of leadership? Well, it's the art of mobilizing people to invest in a shared vision. Mentorship is the exact same. Maybe the only defining feature that makes it different is the vision part is to help them be and become something. Physician, researcher, educator, administrator, whatever the case may be. But if we use the idea of leadership synonymous with mentorship, I think again it changes our perspective on what we're stepping in here to do. We're not just teaching, we're not just giving back, we're actually leading. The people you're mentoring today will be your colleagues of tomorrow. And tomorrow might be a lot sooner at times than we think. And the key with the idea of leadership is want to. People can tell when you're nailing it in. If they have a sense that you're approaching this as just a have to kind of thing, their level of engagement and investment will wane. So will yours. Have to is a great motivator to get you to bed in the morning when it's 30 below and you got to come into work, but it's not great for sustaining anything purposeful over time. What does it take to be a good mentor? We're here to inspire, to educate, to support, these kinds of things. Those don't really have have-to elements to it. At the very least, it's a poor second place in terms of trying to be and bring someone's best to the table. In other words, we can say that the idea of mentoring is modeling a certain way of being. And so I'm big on self-awareness. As mentors, maybe we need to ask ourselves this. If I was mentored, if I was my own mentor, that's terrifying. If you were your own mentor, okay, and you're sort of looking at that and assessing that, would you follow you? Would you be inspired by you? Would you feel safe sharing with you? Discussing things with you? Just ask yourself that question. If the answer is no in any of those, are there some things I can do to change that? Do I need to be more empathetic? Do I need to communicate in a different way? Do I need to adjust my communication? We're not dealing with robots, it's people. Yes?
I have a question. So that's someone who's insightful, and someone who wants to be a mentor.
Yeah.
But there are people around
Sure.
who perhaps are less interested in being mentors, or realizing that they have, I'll put a different spin on it, that they have the potential to be great mentors.
Sure.
And how do you get those people to realize that they can be mentors?
So let me just clarify. So these are people that genuinely do want to be mentors? Or just are uncertain as to whether they would be good?
Perhaps the latter.
Okay. As compared to people who don't want to?
Well, but shouldn't everybody be?
Well, the answer would be yes, but
Yeah, I know.
we're humans.
Yeah.
So, people have different personalities and different interests and different motivations. In a sort of ideal world, I like to look at it again as sort of the trust thing. If we're all working within the same context, who wouldn't want to feel that sense of trust? Who wouldn't want to feel that, every other person here has the ability to make me feel how I want to feel at work? And so I can do my part by mentoring and giving back in that way. And if I do that, odds are I will receive that same energy back. Problem is, not everybody is wired that way. So my perspective is, and I asked Karen earlier, because I was very interested to know whether or not mentors in this particular program, were they self-selected, that is to say, were they chosen or were they assigned? And the answer was they're chosen, and I said, good. That's what mentorships are all about. Mentors are chosen. We don't just get assigned someone. We look to someone who, for whatever the reasons, their personality, their teaching style, their openness, affectionate, whatever it might be, that's what we are drawn to. Some people here have the information that we need. Some people have more or less, but that's fairly innocuous. It's the person that we are drawn to. And so those people that may or may not want to be a mentor, I'm going to say, if it's not something that you're driven to do, a sense of purpose and meaning, I don't think I want you doing that, and that's okay. The people that you're saying that have the ability and the skill and maybe just need that little bit of push, help them figure out whatever's getting in the way, fear, insecurity, uncertainty, what have you, what could speak louder than that? What would the payoffs potentially be that are stronger than that? The question of why might you consider that? Giving back, legacy, contributing something of value to a young learner, that sense of satisfaction. Mentorship is a high. Don't kid yourself. When you're helping someone become, and you look back and all of a sudden someone who was R1 in surgery and is doing this when they have the tool in their hand versus now they're just rocking the show. And that's an incredible high to know that you contributed to that. And particularly people who are, let's say, later in their career, I think naturally there's a shift towards legacy. You've accomplished all you can accomplish, or at the very least your list of accomplishments is quite strong. What do you want to do for the second half of your career? You know, giving back, leaving a legacy, leaving the place better than when you found it. These are some ideas that come to mind. Connect them to why. That's the first point. Yes?
So I guess the spin on that though is that based on everybody, come from a different framework, is that do we need to have multiple mentors as opposed to just one? And that be a piece of advice that we give mentees, is that one person can't serve all these various functions.
Absolutely. And it's interesting because I know that you're someone who's active in social media. To me, that's a whole new frontier as well, where you were expanding your list of available mentors. Twitter, for example, I'm part of the medical groups that have dedicated Twitter followings of people who all share a common interest. It's amazing the learning that's taking place. Again, safe platform, these are people who all have the same interest, they're sharing ideas and research methods and latest tips of the trade and how to do things and that sort of thing. It's incredible. You don't have to be limited geographically in terms of the mentors that are available. And secondly, to your point, I agree. We have mentors for different things. My closing thing, I should probably say now, because you never know, I might not get to it. When each of us, mentor and mentee, owns our role in this thing and does it well, you begin to shift from a mentorship program to a mentorship culture. And at that point, we start to look for other people to serve as a mentor for various things. I might go to Deborah because, wow, just the way that she communicates with people is fantastic. I want to learn more about that. Minka, the way that she handles pressure situations, amazing. What can I tap into to draw some of what she does from her? And so whatever the things that we need, we have mentors all around us. I do like the idea of having sort of a main mentor, if you will, because again, this is about a developmental experience. So the more that relationship part is developed over time, the more we'll get to the deeper aspects of what it is they truly need to learn about and want. So again, it's not just the skill that we're developing, it's the person as well. Yes?
I don't want to keep you off your main topic, so maybe you'll come back to this. But I'm a mentor. I've been here this whole morning, and the one question that still eludes me is, what performance metrics do I use to know whether or not I'm being a good mentor? Does my mentee have to like me? Does my mentee have to dislike me? And so that I'm unclear on, sorry.
No worries.
So any ideas you have as to how we know when we're doing an adequate job?
Yeah. I think in terms of the more structured aspects of it, many of the programs that I've been affiliated with, they do have sort of an arm's reach kind of assessment tool at the end of it. A feedback mechanism, whether it be a survey or they sit down with the department head or that kind of thing. And there's pros and cons to that. The pros being you do get some feedback that you can use to assess, what are the things they could be doing better, more of, less of. Having said that, the psychological safety piece comes into play again. How open am I going to be to talk to the department head about Deborah the mentor when they are colleagues? Something that has to be considered. I think the best thing is the relationship, in all honesty. And that is to say, if we get to a point where we have that trust, and you as the mentor have demonstrated and have been a fallibility model, which is to say, I'm not coming in here as the expert who's perfect in everything. I'm going to tell you where I make mistakes and I need to do better as well. If there's that trust, I think you have that openness where they will say, these are the things that I need more of. These are the things that I'm not so sure I need to mark anymore. And ideally, as we go along, the mentorship thing becomes like this, doesn't it, in terms of what we contribute. And some might say that in the final turn, the mentee passes us in some ways because they've got the best of us plus their own knowledge, their own observations. So to answer your question, I think it's partly some sort of departmental assessment tool that will provide some feedback for you. There would be departments that you might even look to for that. Do they have one in surgery? No. I know in emergency medicine they do. And then again, secondly is just the relationship itself. And you might even experiment and make it even safer to bring a group and have more of a focus group together. Here's some of the things that we have found as mentor-mentees. We're working through this thing in real time, aren't you? Figuring it out on the fly. So what are the things that other people are doing? Mentors meeting with mentors and mentees meeting with mentees to get a sense of what that might be. But as far as the hardcore metrics and stuff, yeah, I'm not really certain. I'm sorry. Yeah.
Sir, and I want to cut in because unfortunately I have to leave.
Sure.
So a couple of things that, with respect to the point about being great mentors out there, I think our program can benefit those people, gives them a home to apply their trades up to the program leadership to identify those people. And your comments about mentorship and leadership are really very strong about giving back. But I think it can't be understated how much you get from being a mentor.
Absolutely.
And if I could use a sports analogy, I guess you often your young athlete, an elite athlete, and they say the game slowed down.
Yeah.
That's how I feel when I get the privilege of mentoring people. You listen, you learn from them, and then with me, suddenly, I see the bigger picture. I can see the ice, so to speak.
Yeah.
And for myself, it benefits. When I write a grant, it's different now because of what I've learned from them. So I think, unless you've lived it though, you don't get that. Atul talked a little bit about that this morning and some of the stuff we dealt with there. But I think that's really important. I'm trying to encourage people into the mentorship role. It's not, giving only.
It's shared. The
getting.
learning is shared. The value is shared. That's a fantastic point. Thank you for sharing that. Any other questions? I mean, I could quickly get into, are we, no, quarter two, right? Are we done? Quarter two? Okay. There were other questions around this? In terms of managing the mentor relationship as a mentor, some of the other things that constantly come up in literature and in just the observations that I've had in conversations with people, when we are giving information as mentors, the most important thing is that it's high in information. And I can't tell you how many times I've heard people say, the thing that frustrates me the most is not getting that information piece. They're less concerned at times with the style of feedback, and they kind of provide two polar examples. They say, geez, I'll use surgery as an example. I was in the OR, and it wasn't my best performance. I know I did things 80% well. There's a few things I could have done differently or better or this kind of thing. And so I'm waiting to get some feedback, and the person says, hey, that was fantastic. See you tomorrow. I'm going, what was fantastic? I know myself, there's 5 things I am going to beat myself up over all night. You're not giving me anything to go on. Conversely, the person that looks in the eye and says, hey, you sucked. That was terrible. See you tomorrow. Again, there's no information. I can't get better at that. All I'm going to do is ruminate and worry and beat myself up. Whereas the style of feedback is less important. You could say either of those two things. I mean, it's not great to say that you suck part, but what's important is to follow it up with some information. And here's 3 things that I observed, that can take your game to the next level, that will make you better in that situation. Next time, provide them the information piece. And again, I said, serve as a fallibility model. We're trying to encourage people that it's safe to make mistakes, and that's why we're here. We're here to learn. But when does the learning stop? We're lifelong learners. If we are committed to that, we ourselves are just as fallible. Last time I checked, when you become a mentor, you don't become something other than human. We are going to make mistakes. We are going to feel pressure. We're going to experience these very human reactions to things. So bring that to the table. Let me tell you about a case where I made a mistake. Let me run up to that. Instantly, again, it normalizes it for the person. And if they're less afraid to constantly make mistakes, do you think they make more or less of them? They make less. There's more focus. It's just available to perform. I understand. I don't want to make mistakes, but I understand as being human, I'm going to. What matters the most is the mentor having a framework to deal with the inevitable setbacks, failures, challenges that we will experience. And again, if that relationship piece is strong, we can go into those conversations. I, as the mentor, can share my own processes through my own personal experiences, and it will empower them to ask the questions and to share their own. So those are some tips that I would have in terms of the role of mentor. Now, if we flip the script of it here and talk about the learner, the mentee, what are some of the things that they can do to help optimize the mentorship experience. First and foremost is to be proactive. Again, that whole ESP thing, mentors don't have it. There's questions you have, get over yourself and ask the damn questions. Seek them out. Ask them when is the most appropriate time. Maybe they have what we call office hours. Maybe it's not the best thing to do in the middle of something, after the end, ask a question. I was working with a med resident at one time in a surgical subspecialty, and he was kind of bemoaning the fact, he said, I have all these questions, but there's just no avenue for me to get the feedback. And I said, really, why is that? He said, we just don't do that around here. What do you mean you don't do that around here? What does that even mean? Well, it's just not something that we really do. I said, well, why don't you be the person to do it? And let's see what happens. I said, I've never been in surgery. I've had surgery, but I've never watched it. I said, but I would find it hard to believe that there was not a few moments of idle time, so to speak, whether it's scrubbing in and scrubbing out or whatever, 1 or 2 minutes, that's an eternity of time to ask a couple of questions that you can get some real-time feedback for that will A, contribute to your learning, and B, allow you to sleep well that night. I said, so what is the deal? Is that not possible? He said, well, I suppose it is. I said, try it. Just try it one time. So I saw him about a month later, and he came up to me off the side. I was in Brody Center. He literally flagged me down. He said, I did that thing. I said, what thing? He said, that thing. Oh, okay. We started talking about it. And he said, I set it up. I told my mentor in advance. They were scrubbing in. And I said, I'd like to do something a little differently this time. If it's okay to you at the end, I won't take much of your time, but I have 2 or 3 questions I'd like to ask you. Is that okay? I looked at him, kind of skeptical. I said, it'll be okay. So they went through the thing, and afterwards they were scrubbing out. Is that the right term, scrubbing out? They were washing up after. And posed the question. I said, how'd it go? He said, well, I'd asked for 5 minutes. It turned into 15 minutes. And at the end, the mentor thanked him. Why did the mentor thank him?
I think having someone seek advice from you reminds you that you have something of value to offer.
Yeah, absolutely. This gentleman's comment right here, this was the reason why. You understand, wow, the idea of teaching and mentoring is a high in of itself. The value add in return for us is enormous. He felt like a teacher and a mentor in that moment. There was this perfect alignment between what the mentee needed and the mentor could provide that was in real time. That mentor left feeling fantastic. They knows that this person will be better in that situation, that moment, next time. The mentee leaves knowing that I will be better in that situation, in this moment, next time. That's learning, incredible. It took 5 minutes, they stretched to 15, but. So again, I always put it on the mentee. You're dealing with very busy people. Find out when is the best time to access them and ask more questions. Related to that, in terms of how the mentee, the learner, can enhance or optimize the mentorship experience, show up. And I don't just mean physically, that's important. If you have a meeting, make sure you're there. But show up, prepared, ready, energized. Someone talked about, one of the attributes is sort of being respectful. Well, it works for the learner as well. Respect the time that you're being given. Make sure that when you're in front of that person, you're ready to go. You have your questions, you've done your homework, and this kind of thing. And again, what it will do is it will create additional interest and investment on the part of your mentor. Because if they feel that you're not ready, you're not taking it seriously, they will match your investment. If you are coming ready and willing and excitement and bringing energy, they equally will match that investment. So show up. Something so simple. The other thing I encourage a mentee to do, and that is to engage in some mechanism of reflective practice, both as an individual and with your mentor. And reflective practice, there are so many different models that you can use. I like the Gibbs model. It's sort of a 6-stage model. And what's nice about it is, and again, this is something that's a very personal exploration that you go through, but it does provide a bit of structure. So at the very least, to get you going, there's sort of some steps and sequences that you can follow. The idea of describing what it is you want to reflect on, going into an analysis phase, what went well, what would I do differently, was I ready for this moment, these kinds of things. and building towards some sort of an action plan. Okay, in this situation, what would I do differently for next time? And it's a great process to engage in with your mentor as well, because you get a double level of that sort of analysis and interpretation. So anything that if I have some sort of subconscious bias of myself, I'm being too hard on myself, or the opposite, I need to be harder on myself, and that's what's getting in the way of true understanding and sort of learning, I bring the same stuff now and meet with my mentor, and I can kind of cross-reference it and have them say, whoa, you're being way too hard on yourself here. You did 99% of the thing flawlessly. There's 1% we need to get better at next time. But all you're thinking about is the 1%. Or conversely, I think it's called the Dunning-Kruger effect, which is actually a psychological condition. People who are so caught up in themselves, they can't even see how incompetent that they are. There's no one who's done that in medicine, I'm sure. But, that's where we need a mentor to sit you down and say, are you kidding me? You think you're at level 10, you're at level 2. Here's what we need to do. Okay, let's get you going. So again, that sort of, it breaks that reality distortion effect, and we get the goods. And we were talking earlier about the mentor being, it's not just sunshine and rainbows, it's giving that feedback that will help them grow and make them better. Sometimes it's not what they want to hear, but it's what they need to hear. And if we have that trust and that relationship, we can provide that information, and it will inspire them to act, because they know, there's a saying, nobody cares what you know until they know that you care. If I feel that my mentor cares genuinely about me and my development, whatever they say to me, I'm going to take it personal in a good way. It's going to motivate me, inspire me. I want to be better for myself and for them. That's the power that they have. So, those are some of the suggestions that I have, mindful of the time. As I said to you, in my closing bit there, the more that you really latch on to these roles and own them and make sure that you have these conversations frequently and openly and honestly, again, you shift from a mentorship program to a culture. And at that point, there's mentors everywhere. And to Minka's point earlier, it isn't even about then accessing different ones. You're stepping into an environment where you just know intuitively the things that I need are here. I just got to figure out, who resonates with me more than others. I'm going to go to this person for leadership advice, and go to that person for communication advice, etc. So, anyways, those are my observations of some of the top mentors and mentees and how you can create and optimize the mentorship experience. I'm happy to answer any questions or provide any resources. And thank you. Thank you for your time.
There is time for 1 or 2 questions if you have anything to ask.
So many of your comments are generally applicable, but many of them were sort of for people in training. And actually the mentorship program this morning was sort of the next step. It was for young faculty to mentor them or senior faculty. Are there any differences just between those 2 different scenarios?
I don't think there'd be any differences other than, obviously the experiential gap is less than, say, someone who's a much more junior learner. So in actuality, it might become either more about the tools of the trade, less about the relationship aspect, or in some cases it could be exactly the opposite. I got the experiential knowledge piece down. I need to come to you as someone who can help me get my shit together. Let's be honest, I'm stressed out. I don't know how to deal with these people. I often hear, particularly medicine residents, when they go into practice, it's not the responsibility and things like that consumes them. It's just not knowing how to be in practice. Like, that's not in the textbook. So as you're dealing with, say, more faculty kinds of mentors, those are the kinds of things that they might want from you more than anything. How do I navigate this crazy world? That's the experiential part that I'm missing. It's not maybe still how to do this procedure or that. So I think that, to answer your question, the kinds of knowledge that they might be seeking changes based on their experience and wisdom level. But at the core of it still is the relationship. Because, again, I'm a junior faculty, I'm coming in here, and I don't want anybody to think I don't belong here. And I have a chance to sit down with someone who's very senior and I respect. I don't want him or her to think, that I don't have all my you-know-what together. Right? But in actuality, the most important thing I can do is be open and say, help me figure this stuff out. So if that relationship and trust is there, the same thing happens. So the relationship is central either way. Does that answer your question?
Yes.
I think it's worth observing that in our program that we're trying to establish here at the Institute, we do encourage new investigators to seek at least 2 mentors. So one for their science and one for their academia or career goals. And we've found that in different cases, they can all meet together and have lots to talk about. And in some cases, there's too big of a gap between the expertise among the mentors, and it's better that they meet separately. So it's been a really good experience to even observe how these relationships develop. But it definitely speaks to the point that not one person can do it all for you. Yeah.
I would like to ask you a question, if that's okay. You know, again, as someone who is so passionate about being a mentor and has such great experience being a mentor, who do you turn to for support as a mentor? I mean, do you have colleagues, if you will, that quote unquote would be at your level? Because again, you're still learning as well, right? You're still wanting to develop and go to that next level. It's sort of that pedestal thinking thing again, isn't it? When you're so experienced and people look up to you so much, do you have people that you turn to?
I think we all do, but it's much more informal. And in fact, one of the things that I find very exciting about this program is it's an attempt to formalize it. I wish it had existed 30 years ago.
It's the thing about conferences, right? I mean, the best learning is not always in the session. It's in the coffee shop or the pub or the lounge.
It's over here.
Yeah. And it's true, it's that informal learning. I always said my mentor, Dr. Cal Bogger, I had a PhD in this stuff long before I had a PhD. You know, just going out for the odd pint, the odd breakfast, and talking about, you know, the real world stuff. It was such a privilege.
Well, thank you again, Jason.
Thank you all.